Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I am your host. And joining me are my guys, Tyler and Alex. Very fitting day in the life of Alex and his fandom as the Chargers sign Jeremiah Attaochu and his Eagles trade for Robert Quinn. So, Alex, how you doing today, man? And what was today like?
Yeah, very weird because I honestly forgot Jerry Attaochu was still in the league. But he's back and he's a Charger. And of course, yeah, they had the tweet that was like, "We're moving JC to injured reserve. In comes Jerry Attaochu." But he's here to fortify the depth. Hopefully, he boosts the edge rush from what it has been. So, here's to hoping. But yeah, the Eagles make a big move, and yeah, the Chargers are stuck in 2014 as per me and Tyler's names. So here's to hoping it works out. But I'm doing okay.
Yeah, it is the duality of franchises for sure. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
I'm just scrapping the lowest part of my soul to find some optimism and some way to get behind this Jeremiah Attaochu signing. I'm sure it was a lot easier for Alex to get behind Robert Quinn.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's a slightly different case for the Eagles in the NFC, and being able to get Robert Quinn. So obviously, that's where we'll start today. As the Chargers, make it official first with J.C. Jackson, I guess, and then also with the signing of Jeremiah Attaochu. So I was a little surprised that Chris Rumph did also not go on injured reserve. I didn't really see an update from the reporters today about Chris Rumph, so we'll see what happens there. But JC Jackson on injured reserve, his season is officially over. Since the last time we talked, obviously we have gotten more clarification on what his injury is. It is a ruptured patella tendon, which is one of the worst injuries possible for a professional athlete or any athlete in general. So I have had that injury. The recovery is brutal. I was not a professional athlete at that time. I was a high school athlete. So very different, circumstances for sure. But, I'm sure people in the chat can, mention the studies and things like that JC Jackson is in for quite a long haul over the next couple of years as he recovers from this ruptured patella tendon.
Yeah, about as bad as news if you could have received on that particular end, I suppose. They will all but likely be forced to keep Michael Davis at this point or burn an early pick on a corner, which I guess is also possible. But JC Jackson might not even start the year playing for the Chargers. And even if he is somewhat playing, he's still not going to be 100%. So the Chargers are not going to have to watch Michael Davis. Maybe it gets really bad and you do have to cut him. But like Michael Davis might have just earned his job again next year as a $9 million, whatever a year guy, because JC's not going to be ready. JC, it's so tough because we just don't know anything about JC, and people in the chat might say like, "Oh, he sucks." That's what we know. I don't think it's quite that, but we also don't know that he's a positive for this team yet either. It looked like it. It was so close, but then he got hurt. So the Chargers are going to roll next year with probably having to keep Michael Davis, and then JC not even playing to start the year. And then when he does play, is he even good? We don't even know that. Like if Joey Bosa missed this year, I know if he came back next year, he's one of the best edge rushers in the league. He just missed the year. JC Jackson, I think he can be one of the better corners in the league, but we don't really know that. So it's a very, very tough situation, and it's going to change their future outlook.
Yeah. And if we were just to take the longer end of, recovery and just say 9 months from now, that brings us to next July, right? Like the soonest that JC will feel comfortable just running is next training camp. And then you start talking about getting into the swing of things and, getting conditioned for the preseason, which, as we know, was with the knee wound injury, a tough thing for him already this year. So, we're certainly starting behind the 8 ball in terms of this 5-year contract with JC Jackson. And it's really unfortunate, especially because he was starting to play well in that Seattle game. And then just things, have not gone well. I guess getting into the Attaochu part of this, just not a name that I would have expected in terms of trying to bolster the edge group like at all. This is kind of one of those situations where I thought maybe they'd like lean towards like a Carlo Kemp or lean towards even like Emeka Egbele, like if he's still around, right? So I sort of thought they kind of would have gone there as opposed to just going back all the way to Attaochu, who obviously hasn't played in a while. So I just was a little bit surprised in that sense that they would have gone for a player like that. But he can get back to his days of old production, and that would obviously be a really good thing. Was a pretty consistent player for the Broncos in 2020 and 2021 for what it's worth, but it's just we haven't seen it in a while from him. So just not what I would have expected from an edge. But definitely in terms of the corresponding move, big blow for JC Jackson. And it's a disaster in terms of what we need for this franchise, and not being able to have any clarity there, not knowing if you're keeping Michael Davis or drafting another corner. I think is a huge problem.
Yeah, in terms of JC, obviously you can look at the most notable and probably the worst outcome of this specific injury recently was Victor Cruz, right? I believe it was in 2015. He ruptured his Patella tendon, came back in 2016 and was just not ready. And then he had like a hamstring and a calf injury, and just like was never really himself again. He played in the 2017 season, and did not really ever look like himself again. So that's kind of the worst outcome there. Obviously that would be really unfortunate for JC Jackson after the way that his career has started, and then he finally gets his big payday. And then also you could look at maybe a more positive outcome of Jimmy Graham, who tore his patella tendon, or ruptured it, I guess, when he was in New Orleans. And he still ended up having a couple Pro Bowl seasons left after that, played in the NFL, obviously, for the Bears and the Packers, and still had a pretty good career. So it's not a super common NFL injury, right? I feel like most of the knee injuries that we see are kind of an ACL, MCL in nature. But this is obviously not great for JC. And what it means for the future, we'll see. I'm not totally sold on Michael Davis, earning his role back. I still think there's a world where he doesn't play super well. Chargers still cut him to save some money, and then maybe they draft a corner again relatively early. So that remains to be seen, in my opinion. I'm not sold that Michael Davis solidifies this position as others assume. I mean, he has his weaknesses, he has his strengths for sure. But I'm not there with Michael Davis. So it sucks for JC Jackson, man. There's no way around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting back to Jeremiah Attaochu, it's so weird going back to the start of my real serious fandom for the Chargers and think of the guy from Georgia Tech and all those things. What would make him a more desirable option than Emeka Egbele, unless you're me, and I guess Jamal Davis, but Carlo Kemp? Veteran presence, is he better against the run? I don't know what made him, or Derek Tuska, more desirable than some of the other guys that they could have picked up. What is the draw here?
Yeah, in terms of Jeremiah Attaochu, right? He was pretty solid for the Broncos in 2019 and 2020. When Brandon Staley was hired, I thought maybe that they would bring Jeremiah back last season, somebody he was familiar with and knew the scheme and stuff like that. But he spends last year with Chicago, floated back and forth between the practice squad and the active roster. And then this year, same thing in Baltimore. Baltimore cuts him to sign JPP, and he's just been kind of out there. So it's it's strange, man. When I was picturing kind of the additions of an edge rusher, I was definitely not picturing a Jeremiah Attaochu reunion. There were other veteran players out there if they wanted to go that route. Obviously, there's Emeka Egbule, who the team was familiar with. So it's just puzzling. It feels like the Trey Marshall signing, like all over again. Somebody that
that makes me really optimistic. Sick.
Sorry. I hate to burst the bubbles. Like, I think, again, if this were 2 years ago, I'd be like, okay, I understand it. He was productive, but he just hasn't been around. And so to me, this is like, we didn't really believe fully in Emeka Egbule or Carlo Kemp, and we're just, going to throw something out the wall and maybe it sticks. I don't know. So hard to be really optimistic about this signing at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the first signing that I thought of personally in relation to this one was when they signed Jaleel Adai in 2020 after Derwin James got hurt. Like, to me, it's just like, oh, I know that guy, and we have an injury there right now, and so let me call up his agent. Like, it was a very, kind of similar instance in that case when obviously Derwin got hurt, and everyone's like, oh, well, maybe they'll go get Earl Thomas, maybe they'll go crazy, and then it's like, okay, here's Jaleel Adai. We're very familiar with what he does. So there is that familiarity, and maybe there obviously are players that could have given you more production than Jerry Attaochu at this point, but if they're familiar with the system, then I think that's what Telesco was comfortable with at this stage too.
Marco points out that we know how to reach Egbule. We do, but this
we got a plug.
we got a plug. But in all seriousness, I would have preferred Kyler Fackrell over this. Like, I think that probably should have been the move, because some beat reporters are saying that, like, oh, like he's going to be the special teams replacement for Chris Rumph. It's like, what? Isn't that what Derek Tuska is supposed to be? Like, the Chargers need like a legitimate edge 3 right now, and frankly probably need a legitimate edge 2 in my opinion. So I don't understand this. Like, again, if you're signing this to replace Chris Rumph's special teams ability, like, I think that's a very poor process, because now you're going to be asking Kyle Van Noy to play 80% of the snaps on the edge, and like, he's good against the run. I think that's probably his best attribute as an edge rusher. But there's just no pass rushers outside of Khalil Mack on the edge. Like, I'm very skeptical of this plan. And, they've said in the past that, they can kick Morgan Fox to the outside. And like, again, like, you need like a legit edge 3 at minimum, not some special teamer who can play, 10 snaps a game on defense. And now they have 2 of those guys, and the gap between Kyle Van Noy and those 2 guys is pretty big, in my opinion. And then the gap between Khalil Mack and Kyle Van Noy is huge. So it's not pretty right now. They're going to have to continue to manufacture pressures in external ways with stunts and blitzes. And that's just not a sustainable way to play defense. And we've seen it really bite them in the ass the past couple of times that they've played a good quality offensive line. And, the Cleveland Browns just whooped on the pass rush because they're a good offensive line. The Seattle Seahawks, same thing. Khalil Mack has his worst game, and so Geno Smith is just chilling in the pocket all game long. So I'm very confused by this move. Again, if like Derek Tuska was the injury, okay, sure, go sign some special teams edge rusher. But it's like,
sure,
you need somebody who can legitimately rush the passer, not somebody to come in and play special teams.
Yeah, that's geez Louise. The Tuska Attaochu rotation certainly doesn't scare anyone. And I know the 49ers, as soon as Khalil Mack is off the field for any portion of the game, they are going to absolutely run it in either direction, have tons of success.
The Falcons will do that too, man. Like,
oh yeah,
they have they're playing some good offensive lines coming up. Like, this is a big concern. And, we'll get to like the bye week takeaways, but frankly, like, I have more faith in the offense figuring it out right now than I do with the defense, because there's no pass rush. The linebackers are a concern. You don't have a safety besides Derwin James, who likes to tackle consistently. Like, I'm very skeptical about the defense going forward.
Yeah, as am I. I didn't realize Tuska and Attaochu were on the Broncos together. So it really is a Trey Marshall signing, and Isang Basie, and the other guy who wasn't good.
What was his name? Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking right now. I don't know, but hey man, if there's one other pass rusher out there that they could go and just really bring back the whole Denver edge room, and that's Malik Reed in Pittsburgh, who's one of the worst edge rushers in the league right now. So maybe that's the trade target.
Ha 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 ha.
All right. So obviously this is not the only thing that we're going to talk about tonight. We are going to talk about some fun bye week conversations as well. So we are going to talk about the trade deadline, which is, like I said, rapidly approaching. And then after that, we're going to discuss, we're going to revisit our preseason tiers, essentially doing kind of like a performance check-in with the Chargers players, most of the key players anyway. And we're going to see who has moved up that chart, who's moved down. Some of them are going to be pretty striking. But first and foremost, we are going to start with the trade deadline and the news that, not news, but we're a little under a week away, I should say, from the trade deadline. So we're just going to bring up 3 names. I'm sure we'll talk about some of the bigger names that are on the market as well. But Alex, we'll start with you. I already know the answer to this, but do you see the Chargers going big game hunting at all next week?
No big game hunting. Very small duck hunting. As I guess in this case is what I would call it. We're starting at Jerry Attaochu, so I don't think we're getting any Robert Quinn type deals for the Chargers, unfortunately. But maybe Robert Quinn only going for a 4th round pick. It makes it so the Chargers can get other edge players for slightly less value. And that's actually my first trade. This was a list that was made before they signed Jerry Attaochu, because that came out of left field. But another Jerry Hughes is available. And if the Chargers wanted to go that way, that's still a deal that makes sense for them. He is only on a 2-year deal, of which going into next season they can save $5 million by releasing him. So if they just wanted him as a supplementary player for this season, with the Joey Bosa injury and obviously everything that's happened since, Joey Bosa most likely still out somewhere between 5 and 6 weeks, if we're looking at his timetable realistically. If you go get Jerry Hughes right now for probably not much more than a lower day 3 pick, based on the evaluation of Robert Quinn today, I mean, I don't think that's the Texans are obviously a team that's rebuilding. They want to accumulate assets and picks and everything they can. For the Chargers, it helps kind of stop the bleeding at the edge position for now, and you can sort of move forward. And when Joey Bosa does come back, you can then run Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and Jerry Hughes as your 3 edge rushers, which just would be amazing if they somehow find a way to be able to do that. So for me, if we're talking about which one is like the most obvious trade target, out of my list that I made that I think is realistically obtainable, and obviously the money works out, the picks work out. And it just makes a little bit too much sense for the Chargers to still do it, even with noted 2022 edge rusher Jerry Attaochu now on the team. I still think Jerry Hughes is an option for them.
No, I had him on my list as well. He's somebody I'd be very interested in, and you'd be talking about somebody that they could realistically cut after the season. It doesn't really cost them very much to go out and get Jerry Hughes. The financial cost this year would be very slim as well. And if he plays well, you keep him, right? And then next year you have Bosa, Mack, and Jerry Hughes. I think that's a really good edge room. And then obviously Chris Rumph as well. So that's somebody I would be very, very interested in. And to me, it's almost kind of like the biggest name that we could probably realistically talk about, because we're going to mention realistic trade targets here. Like, we're not talking about Brian Burns and DJ Moore and Elijah Moore, as much as we would personally love Elijah Moore on this show. That's the focus, right? Is these realistic trade targets. And I think Jerry Hughes makes a lot of sense. Tom Telesco actually drafted him in Indianapolis. So it's not like there's no familiarity there. He hasn't really overlapped with any of the coaching staffs by any means, but again, they need a legit edge too, in my opinion, right now, because Joey Bosa is out and potentially back in like 3 or 4 weeks. We'll see. But I think Jerry Hughes checks a lot of boxes for them, makes an instant impact. And somebody's going to get him for really cheap, and it's going to be really annoying.
Yeah, can't wait to see him on the Chiefs or the Bills or something. Yeah, but like you said, it's about as big of a realistic trade target as we could really think of, which I know the chat will not think that's very fun, but we're trying to be somewhat realistic here. Attaochu, yes, he is currently slated to be their edge 4. Yes, Tuska is their edge 3, or whatever, how you want to flip-flop those, but both those guys can pretty clearly be replaced. That's not very difficult. So I think you absolutely can justify it based on what Quinn, what they got for Quinn. Should be pretty easy, and the contract isn't all that bad. So yeah, I would love to see it because it hasn't been great along the edge. I think Kyle Van Noy has been a bit better. I think he kind of started a bit rougher. I think things have been getting better. But now that you don't have Chris Rumph, you do have to do something, and I hope they're not complacent at this spot.
Yeah, they again really need some help because they're going to play some really good offensive lines the next couple of weeks, and if they are serious about being a playoff team still, I think they have to make a move of some kind of pass rusher beyond adding a special teamer who was productive in 2020. So, Tyler, who is your first name that you brought up or are going to bring up today?
Sick. Okay, so you had mentioned a couple of times throughout podcasts or just mentioning it to us in the chat that McKitty has been a bit of a problem. And frankly, having focused on him a bit more the last couple of weeks and just watching what the offense looks like when he's not the tight end too, it's pretty clear that in as nice of a way I can put it, McKitty's not cutting it right now. If you watch a negative run play for the Chargers and where it currently stands, where Eckler is now more of his former self, it's either Matt Filer did something wrong, but not as much the last couple of weeks, or it's basically Trey McKitty blowing some assignment.
Yeah.
And it's pretty consistent. I turn on a half against the Seahawks, and I could say there's probably 4 plays in there where McKitty just could not block his guy, and the run, whatever it was scheduled to go for, it went for less because McKitty, it was just not cutting it. I don't know what happened. I know that there's a new run game. Well, there's no run game coordinator now. I know Frank Smith is gone, but they do still have Kevin Koger. So I would expect him to have taken what he did last year and take that step forward, or at least be the same guy. But to me, if you're asking me, who is the worst kind of starter on the team, I think it's Trey McKitty almost hands down. I think he's been an absolute disappointment so far. And at this point, watching Justin Herbert try to distribute passes, there are instances where McKitty is wide open and Herbert was like, no, I'll literally go anywhere else but Trey McKitty. Like, there's no chemistry there. He's not a productive receiver right now, and he's not blocking very well. Do I think he can still develop? Absolutely. He did great things last year. It looked like he was going to take that next step, but he hasn't. And you have this Chargers team that wants to run 2 tight end sets. They want to be productive, in their 2 tight ends. But McKitty's taken a step back. Everett's been really solid. But Donald Parham, he's, no fault of his own. That's unreliable right now. And frankly, like, he is probably gone next year from this team. We'll see. So you really do have to start considering someone else. So that's my long-winded way of saying that I'm trying to replace one of the worst run blockers according to Pro Football Focus. I have no other way to judge him. I think he's 90th out of 93 in run blocking grade for tight ends. Not great.
That is an accurate assessment by Pro Football Focus.
It is. Oh, 100%. I'm like, yeah, that checks out. No problem. Who is a team that Telesco's made trades with before? I'm going with Chicago Bears, and I'm going to look at Cole Kmet, the tight end from the Bears. Where did he go to college, everyone? Notre Dame. That's right. Exactly. You can still get your Notre Dame quota for the year. He does have an elite RAS score to pair. Is he a great tight end? No. He did have 600 yards last year, but bookending those two things are, a subpar rookie year and a really slow start to this year. But he's a much better blocker than Trey McKitty, which isn't saying a lot. But, McKitty is like the bottom 1 percentile. Cole Kmet more like your 70th percentile. I'll take that. You can't rely on Parham. You can't rely on McKitty. You want to be a 2 tight end offense. Honestly, I know a speed receiver is the big thing everyone wants. I promise you the offense would just be significantly better if they just had a tight end too who could block and occasionally catch passes. We saw how it looked against, the Browns when Donald Parham played half a game and how much better that looked. They need to do something. I think Kmet is a legit sort of realistic target. He's not really doing anything for the for the Bears. Is he available? I don't know. But it's not like he's a core key cog for them right now. It's just not really working. They overdrafted him. He's in his 3rd year. I say give it a shot.
Yeah, so for reference's sake, he's the 24th highest graded run blocker on Pro Football Focus. So
that's better.
That's much better. It's much better. I tweeted this out. I was so jealous watching the Seattle Seahawks tight ends because all 3 of them are really freaking good blockers.
They are.
Will Dissly is probably their best receiver. He's not a great receiver, right? But it's just a function that the Chargers do not have. And last year, when you had Parham and you had Anderson and you had McKitty, who was much better, then the Chargers were able to do a lot more. So I agree. The lack of a blocking tight end is really, really noticeable on this team. And I think a lot of it, frankly, is just poor technique by Trey McKitty. So it's not like he, looks slow or he's not healthy or, he's making poor decisions. It's just really bad technique out there. And so I'm on the same page. I have a tight end. Your tight end call was much better. I think Kmet is probably a better player than the tight end that I'm going to bring up. But I think Kmet would be fantastic. So like I said, my tight end wasn't a high draft pick, doesn't have an elite RAS score, but I think he's a functional tight end, and that's Nick Vannett from the Saints right now. So he's overlapped a few times with this Chargers coaching staff, actually. He was in Denver, shocker, with Brandon Staley. He was obviously drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, so he's got familiarity with Chandler Whitmer and Shoemaker as well. And he was also in Pittsburgh with Sean Surratt and Matt Filer. So lots of scheme familiarity, coaching familiarity there with Nick Vannett. He's kind of been a healthy scratch this year as they've made the transition from quarterback to tight end for one Taysom Hill. So he's not going to move the needle, right? He's not going to be as good as Cole Kmet. But I do think that he is a reliable, solid blocker. And I think he can actually make some plays after the catch. So again, he's would probably cost like a conditional 7th. I mean, he's not even playing for the Saints right now. But I think that checks a lot of boxes, right? Like I think they need a reliable blocker. And you're talking about Donald Parham. I don't even know if Donald Parham is going to play again, like after his 2nd concussion. So tight end, I think, is definitely an underrated need that people are not really talking about.
Yeah, I think the Bears, really the entire NFC is just weird as a whole because you have a lot of teams that are 3-4 and 4-3, and you could make a path to where the Bears win the wild card or something like that. And I was thinking even about the Falcons for some potential trade, and I'm like, well, like the Falcons are technically tied for 1st in their division because Tom Brady sucks right now. Like
that's true.
So like you really, aside from like the Eagles, the Giants, and the Vikings in the NFC, it's like every team technically could compete, but it's a matter of obviously the Bears signal today with the Robert Quinn trade that they are, indeed sellers. So I think that the Cole Kmet thing certainly becomes an interesting conversation, if the Chargers are interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a bit more of a fun name. I've mentioned Kendrick Bourne on here a few times. I don't want to like rehash that. So I am going to mention Marquez Callaway here again, another Saint. I think this to me is probably the easiest trade call for me because he's been in New Orleans. He knows that scheme very, very well. He was with Joe Lombardi the year that he came out, and he was also at Tennessee with Josh Palmer and Derek Ansley. So there's a lot of coaching familiarity there as well. He's tall, so he meets the height quota. He runs a 4.5, so it's not super fast. So he checks that box as well. I will say he has hit 22 miles per hour a few times in the NFL and in college, so he could have just had a poor day at the combine. So he's not Jalen Guyton fast. He's not Tyreek Hill fast by any means, but he's been a successful deep route runner, playmaker for the Saints in the past. He is struggling a little bit with drops this year, but last year he had nearly 800. He had over 800 yards receiving. He was 12th in the league in yards per reception. He was 16th in ADOT. So he is a successful deep route receiver, and the Chargers need that. They don't have any of that right now outside of Mike Williams. So he wouldn't move the needle. You know, a lot of people are talking about like Brandon Cooks and again Elijah Moore and stuff like that. Max Diaz pointing Denzel Mims out. I wouldn't hate that, but there's no scheme familiarity. There's no coaching connections to Denzel Mims. Marquez Callaway is as close to plug and play that you can get on the trade market. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, he's not a needle mover, but he can actually do what you're missing from not having Jalen Guyton out there. He's familiar with the scheme. He's familiar with the coaches. And to me, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, as far as connecting the dots, this is it. I mean, you talk about former players, former coaches from different teams, colleges, you name it. Absolutely. And right down, yes, to the height and the low 40. But like he caught 8 passes of 20 or more yards last year, which is as many as DK Metcalf had, and just one less than Tyreek Hill. So he had more 20-yard passes than Cooks, than Mooney, than Marcus Valdez-Scantling, Henry Ruggs, anybody you're thinking of. Well, I guess not Ruggs anymore. But any of these other trade targets or something that you considered maybe this past offseason, he had more than most of these guys. So I'm not completely against it. And his salary for the entire year is less than $900,000. So, for this team to not have to make any real significant, other moves to make this work, you immediately get him in the building. He understands so much with the coaching staff, with players. It's absolutely plug and play. And he's, if I had to put money on anybody, and I shouldn't because I'll lose, it would be Marquez Callaway.
All right, Alex, who's your next name you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll pull a surprise here, and I'll mention both of the Patriots' unwanted receivers. But I'll mention Nelson Aguilar too, my mortal enemy and former Super Bowl 52 champion. I don't know. I've thought about it, and the drop percentage obviously is one thing that is like concerning, but man, do the Chargers miss Jalen Guyton in a very bad way. Like just somebody that has that speed that can get over the top, like because they don't have it right now with anybody on their team. And if you could get somebody like Nelson Aguilar for probably not much, I can't imagine the Patriots are looking for more than a late day 3 pick on him, since they're not using him anyway, and they're just trying to get all these assets. I believe his contract just runs to the end of this year, right?
I don't
after the season. So he's an expiring contract, which is kind of perfect for the Chargers, who don't know what they want to do at receiver long term outside of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, which gives them a lot of flexibility. And so I would just say that, at this point, just to have someone, I mean, look, if you're not going to use John Hightower, you might as well just have another Eagles receiver who doesn't have good hands, but is fast. And so then Nelson Aguilar is the answer there. Kendrick Bourne is my preferred one if the Chargers want to go in that direction. I think adds a little bit more intermediate route running than someone like Aguilar does, and is a little bit more consistent. I could see him becoming like an easy Herbert target, especially in this time where Keenan Allen's not 100%. Mike Williams is out for at least a month. I think he's someone that could fit a little bit more seamlessly than, forcing the ball to DeAndre Carter has, or Josh Palmer, who's obviously been out with the concussion and injury. So I think he could be a great stabilizing presence too. And also gives them some flexibility for what they want to do going forward. Not an expiring contract like Aguilar, but he is a 1 year, $7 million contract next year. And I believe they can decide to cut him and also save money. So you either have a cheap, affordable contract next year, or, they can decide to move on if the rest of the season doesn't play out well. But so, yeah, I'm kind of in favor of both of them just because, man, they desperately need help in the receiver room. DeAndre Carter cannot be out here playing 94% of the snaps. I was pretty gobsmacked when I just saw that today in general. And Keenan does not have the burst that the Chargers need, and might not get that back over these next 2 weeks during the bye. Mike Williams is out a month. They need help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would prefer Kendrick Bourne straight up as well, because I think Bourne's just a better receiver, and he is familiar with the staff, is familiar with at least some of the scheme that they are running. So I would prefer Bourne, in a vacuum. I mean, Keenan's coming back, Josh Palmer potentially coming back, but Nelson Aguilar bringing something that this team needs. He's a legit 4-4 guy at USC, out of USC, excuse me. So he's somebody that I think should be, at least they should be calling about, right? Because the Nelson Aguilar, not really going to be playing a ton, as Tyquan Thornton really kind of becomes that guy in New England. So I'd be okay with Nelson Aguilar. I don't think again, none of these guys are going to be needle movers. That's not the point of this conversation, right? But I think Nelson Aguilar checks a lot of boxes as well, just not really connected to this coaching staff.
Yes, I can't wait for Chargers fans to have a mild panic because we're getting another former Patriot from Bill, and how much we trust that.
And a former Raider.
Oh yeah,
a lot cheaper of a former Patriot.
That's
fair enough.
Also very true. Also very true. Aguilar was actually pretty good with the Raiders, I will say. All right, Tyler, have you done 2 or just the 1?
I've just done the 1, although I really agreed with Marquez Callaway. I will bring him up because I brought him up again. I will rehash here. Dyami Brown from the Commanders, a player that I freaking loved. I know Steven really liked as well. I think we were similar in our grades for him. The Commanders have $120 million in total money allocated towards the wide receiver position. That does not include Dyami Brown. Over the next couple of years, obviously it's not just 1 year. And part of that investment also does include that first rounder for Dotson. Dyami Brown out of college, he was a fantastic top of route, deep, get open sort of receiver, but he was also a very solid blocker. And those 2 attributes for me were a reason to take him, heck, maybe even in the 2nd round, let alone the 3rd round, which I believe is where he ended up going either right after Josh Palmer or pretty close. Or did he go a little bit later? I forget.
He was after Palmer, yeah.
Yay. The Chargers really could use him as a deep route runner and as a solid blocker. Does he still do that in the NFL? I'm not entirely sure. I can't say I've watched all of the Commanders' Dyami Brown film and snaps, but we did also just see him catch 2 50-yard bombs from Mr. Carson Wentz. So listen, it's a position of need. He has a very specific skill set that I do think fits the Chargers. He runs a 4-4. It's an NFC team. That team is probably not headed for the greatest spots yet. They can afford to let him go. There's even technically history with the head coach. Let it rip. I think that's a player that the Commanders, if they want to find some draft capital, if they're maybe not feeling Sam Howell or whatever, get something, go get Dyami Brown. I'd be all for it.
I want to say that they brought him in for a visit, or was that the COVID year? So maybe it was a virtual visit.
A Zoom thing.
Probably was a Zoom thing. But yeah, I would love that as well. Dyami Brown was pretty high up my list. He was actually in my top 10. Josh Palmer was like a sleeper for me. So Dyami Brown, I think Terrace Marshall, who you've talked about as well, would make some sense, although he's kind of taking on a larger role without Robbie Anderson there. So Dyami Brown would check a lot of boxes for me as well. And again, that's kind of a longer term solution potentially to develop as well. So I'd be about that.
Yeah. Steven, do you have another name to mention? Or
I do have another name. So the last name that I'm going to talk about, he was somebody that I advocated for signing this offseason. That's Lorenzo Carter, who used to be with the Giants. Brandon Staley, I still remember this from researching him, that Brandon Staley giving him like a random shout out ahead of the Giants game last year. He is a former Bulldog, Georgia Bulldog. So Brandon Staley loves that university. Likely scouted him when he was in Chicago. He's not playing a ton in Atlanta right now. He's kind of being phased out for the young players, D'Angelo Malone, and I forget who else they drafted as well. So he's not playing a ton right now. He's not being super productive by any means. But last year when he was with the Giants, he had 31 total pressures, 5 sacks, 3 quarterbacks hit, 3 quarterback hits, excuse me. So not a needle mover, but he had a 12% win rate, pass rush win rate last year, and a PRP of around 8.2, I think it was. So to me, he's like a viable edge 3 that could legitimately like rotate with Kyle Van Noy and still be productive. So again, I wrote him down before. The Chargers signed Jeremiah Attaochu to apparently be that guy. So I sorry, Tyler. Yeah, like again, I'm not asking for much here. I'm not asking for a starter, although I would love Jerry Hughes, but Lorenzo Carter to me makes a lot of sense. Again, I thought that they should have signed him in the offseason, would have been really cheap. He's on a 2-year deal, not very expensive. He's been a productive 3-4 outside linebacker. He went to Georgia. Brandon Staley knows who he is. So I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'll mention one more, a guy who I've said before and has been the MVP of trade rumors, Andre Dillard.
Yes, for the brand.
For the brand. The Eagles are still figuring out what to do with him. I believe it was Jordan Schultz who actually tweeted that today, along with Dalton Reisner, are both, offensive linemen that are getting some interest around the league. Now the Eagles have to navigate what to do there because Jordan Mailata, I believe, is dealing with a shoulder thing. So, they'll have to navigate whether or not they kind of want to sacrifice the depth there, get an extra pick. Technically, the Eagles only have 6 picks after giving up the 4th today. So if they want to get a pick back for, Andre Dillard, then they can decide to do that and sort of be quasi buyers and sellers if they want to get that pick equity back. So yeah, very on brand to suggest Andre Dillard, but the Chargers also still do need offensive line help, especially if swing tackle. Certainly, we trust Andre Dillard being the guy over Storm Norton right now, to be a swing tackle. And obviously, Trey Pipkins has not been 100% the last few weeks. I believe in terms of his MCL timeline, still has the long end of that was like 3 to 6 weeks. So, I mean, he probably still has like 3 or 4 more weeks till he's 100% too. Not to mention, you're already starting Jamari Salyer on the other side of that line, and Slater's out. So I think it's a potential option. Maybe not so much for the Chargers, but potentially for another team. But I think it would be worth poking around if the Chargers kind of want to fortify their depth there until Slater maybe is able to come back later in the season, or just to be more comfortable with the swing tackle situation right now.
So I'm terrified of the idea of trading with Howie Roseman because I know it's just going to look like an absolute dunk on the Chargers.
For what it's worth, some account named @_ML Football, who's an independent NFL reporter approved by the NFL and NFLPA, has 13.6 thousand followers, did tweet out about 3 hours ago that the Chargers have called about Andre Dillard. I don't know if I trust that at all, but somebody earlier in the chat mentioned the Chargers and Andre Dillard, so I went and searched on Twitter, and that was the tweet that was being referenced.
Yeah. So, okay, well, my question would be, what do you do with him? Is he...
I can't see it happening. I mean, because unless you're trading for a backup swing tackle, like that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, are you benching Matt Filer and putting Jamari Salyer at left guard? Like, how invested are we in Andre Dillard? So,
yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what you want to do, because if you wanted to see, for example, how Trey Pipkins has maybe played the last 2 weeks and go, hey, maybe it's worth putting him on like short-term IR and like getting him 100%. Like that could be a potential scenario. But other than that, I guess there's not like an immediate path to Andre Dillard starting, aside from just an injury obviously happening now. But maybe just getting it done before the trade deadline and just having him as a swing tackle body. But again, like, yeah, you don't usually just trade for a swing tackle. But
yeah.
I would just be so upset if like the one trade deadline move Tom Telesco makes is for a backup offensive lineman.
I at least would respect it, because I feel like that's like you're trying to be prepared for something not working. So I would get that. I would bring up someone like Cam Irving from the Carolina Panthers as well. He's stuck behind the 2 starters. And I think there was some, not rumor, but I think Pro Football Focus, mentioned him as someone. He's played more than 400 snaps at 4 spots in the line. So I think I'd go with him potentially if we're looking like a backup, sort of something, swing something. Because sure, why not? My last guy, I'm going to do it. Listen, I want to fix this offense. So I picked a receiver. I picked a blocking tight end. I'm going to go with a running back. Let's go. It's reunion day. Let's go get Justin Jackson from the Lions, man. Because,
I thought you were going to talk about Melvin Gordon there for a second.
No, that's hilarious. But no, I'm not that stupid. Listen, man, Justin Jackson, you look at any number you want, and the numbers were great last year. There was a stretch of 3 games. We had more than 10 touches. He had 322 total yards and 2 touchdowns. Joshua Kelly is hurt. Sony Michel really ain't it. And Isaiah Spiller, I would hate to hamper his development, but he barely just beat out Larry Roundtree last week, and he played 0 special team snaps as well. You have someone like Justin Jackson, who was very good on a per play basis last year, who also had 6 special teams tackles. Listen, man, you gotta try. And I keep saying this guy's good. He was good last year. I get that he's injury prone, but we need 3 or 4 games here. And right now, Sony Michel just quite isn't it. Get back to the tendon that was excellent last year. I think you at least got to give him a shot. It'll never happen, but we did just bring back Jeremiah Attaochu, so I have a little bit of faith, I guess.
That's the pipe dream. That's the big name, Justin Jackson.
Oh yeah, I'd be so hyped.
If you want to know where my brain's at, I just did a Google Troy Maine Pope just to figure out where he is. And he is on the Saskatchewan Roughriders of the CFL. So he's available if the Chargers want to make the offer to go get Troy Maine Pope. But yeah, I Justin Jackson would be interesting. I mean, Melvin Gordon, I don't know. I mean, the Broncos wouldn't do it, but
they might. I feel like it's like a sleeper agent.
Melvin Gordon. I don't think that one's particularly likely, but there is some it makes a little sense for both teams there, but I don't think the Chargers are willing to replace Sony Michel at this point. And they're gonna get Joshua Kelly back at some point, so I don't see them making a move or running back. But would like for them maybe to go aggressive and go grab a Kareem Hunt, who obviously is available in the trade market, but don't see them doing it.
Well, I feel like there's a few reasons that won't work out.
But running back in general.
Yeah.
I feel that. A lot of people mentioning the Broncos in the chat and on Twitter today. I mean, you'd have to do some kind of tax, right, to allow Denver to be okay, let's trade with the Chargers. So, I mean, KJ Hamler would be fantastic, man. I would love that addition. I really liked him at college. He can return the ball, and he's an actual deep threat, so that would be fun. They have some good blocking tight ends as well. That would be cool. So again, no super big names today. That's not, what we do here. We try and be realistic and, these kind of conversations, Tyler, I've been really thinking about Cole Kmet, man. And I've got to say, I would love that one.
Yeah. It's just crazy how Denver signed Russell Wilson, gave him all this money, and meanwhile the trade deadline we're okay, well, they'll trade Jerry Jeudy and just get rid of KJ Hamler and get rid of Melvin Gordon. It's just that season I guess has gone south fast.
All right, guys, anybody else that you wanted to mention here, whether you've looked at some other names that maybe you want to throw a dart at?
I mean, people have mentioned Slayton. I feel like that's been brought up a couple of times. Someone in the chat did mention Tommy Tremble. But no, I was just trying to roll through these. I was going to go through some more edge rushers. The Attaochu news dropped, and I just went, never mind, because I'm not looking at edge rushers today. So, I mean, they still might do it, but I feel like we know where this is going.
Alex, any other thoughts here?
No, I think we exhausted all the players, and it'll be great when you, maybe Tom Telesco will find it in his heart to trade for Rayshon Jenkins. I don't know, like just
Honestly, he's
uh,
been good for Jacksonville, to be
he has
honest.
been. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Jacksonville's 2-5. Maybe you get them to sell, but no, I think we've exhausted all the names, and I am a sicko for googling where Troy Main Pope is. But I think that none of these trades are gonna happen anyway because we're rolling with Jerry Attaochu and God knows who else in the next 5 days.
Yeah, we have trade deadline is coming. We'll see what happens. A lot of these teams sound like they're trying to wait to see if they lose on Sunday, and if they do, then they'll start trading people. So we'll see. Somebody keeps on saying Boyd to the Chargers. Does anybody know what that's about?
I don't know.
Denzel Mims, I would be a fan of that as well. So for what it's worth, I did reach out to a couple agents today. I did reach out to just a general media member who's kind of worked around the NFL for a while. At least in terms of the receiver position, the general sense is that the Chargers want to see what happens with Josh Palmer. They want to see what really happens with Mike Williams, and then they'll assess. So come Monday, if Josh Palmer is still in concussion protocol, Mike Williams is potentially going on IR, then I wouldn't rule out a trade for a receiver. But it sounds like this team really wants to make Josh Palmer, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen work. They've only played 12 snaps together, so I understand it. But yeah, that's where, at least from a receiver perspective, that's where the team seems to be at right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I don't know. Maybe we'll get a tight end trade. That'd be really fun. All right, so we're gonna wrap up today's show. We're gonna revisit this tiers list that we made before the season, putting the Chargers key players into some tiers. And again, this is what I was talking about. Some of these are going to be very noticeably different than what we were talking about before the season. So we are going to, again, move some people around today. So we'll talk about it. Alex, who's your first standout here that you want to move up or down?
I mean, I guess if we're just going like first person, you see Filer down probably relative to the season that he's had.
100%.
I guess if we could put him, I guess, from the B to the C tier, given his play this season, but definitely has regressed a little bit from last year. So sort of just scrolling down from S to F, probably the first, guy that I personally noticed.
Yeah, I think that's fair with him. I think Tyler put him in the right spot. I'm putting Trey Pipkins up in the B tier. I'm moving him all the way up top with Mike Williams and Gerald Everett. Obviously went back and watched the film from this week. I know he technically gave up the sack, but he looked great, man. He looked much more like himself. He looked healthy. Had a couple really fantastic reps against Uchenna Nwosu whenever Nwosu went to the other side. So I know people were really upset about the sack that he gave up, but outside of that, man, and really that was more a Justin Herbert issue for me. I thought Trey Pipkins was back to his usual self on Sunday, and I fully expect him to continue to get healthier and look better going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. He did look pretty solid outside of that one play, which again you could debate was really him. I don't know if we're moving injured guys all that much. I think Joshua Kelly does deserve a bump up, especially with the new number from the roster bubble practice squad F tier. That's kind of where he was last year. I think we put him in the F tier because we put Roundtree in the D tier. So that was where Kelly ended up. I don't really know.
Before training camp, wasn't it? So this was us starting to figure out who the RB3, RB4 was. So Josh Kelly has definitely earned the right to move up, even though he's on injured reserve right now.
Yeah. Is he? I don't know if I can officially put him as a solid, number 2 option. Just technically, we haven't seen enough from him, but I'll put him like the C+ tier. There's a little bit of upside there. I do think there's upside with him here.
Yeah, you can put Trey McKitty's ass down in the next tier as well.
Yeah. Where is he? Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's certainly playing like that.
And Larry Roundtree as well. I mean, he was cut.
That's a quick one. Norton can have a new category.
Who's
Isaiah
next?
Spiller.
Who's that next to Kelly and in next to Palmer?
This is Xander Horvath.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Sure. I'm also okay with this. I do think if we're being realistic, I think we're there with one Justin Herbert. Outside of the All-Pro tier, obviously. Can he work back into it? Maybe. We considered All-Pro, like top 5
top 3 or 4,
consistently. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Just not there right now. And that's not entirely his fault.
It's been bumped up by Gino. I mean, sadly, just...
Somebody said, "Where's Brandon Staley's tier?" This is a player tier. We're not there yet.
Well, chat, where would you put Brandon Staley? I could make a tier. I can't add him though.
I feel like DeAndre Carter, we could put him. Do we move him up a tier?
Yeah, I can put him in C.
He's been solid. It's just, not the role that he should be playing.
Yeah,
It's painful seeing Jalen Guyton here because God, he would help so much right now. Everything that happened, but yeah,
I definitely agree moving Josh Palmer down a tier. That is very fair. Same with Isaiah Spiller. Obviously, he's barely playing. Do we have more players at the bottom, or is that it?
That's it.
Are we moving to the defense or?
Oh, because you have it separated offense, defense. Okay.
Yeah, we did it separately last time.
Okay.
Give you one moment. No, shut up. No.
I was just gonna see if we wanted to move anybody else up, but I think that's fine. So it's all good.
Oh boy, Tyler, what are we doing here?
I was really confused there. I'm like, where's the linebackers? Where's the pass rushers? So it's all
I ask that every week too.
Yeah, I get it now. I gotcha.
I'm gonna take.
Oh man, this is painful to look at.
This is really painful. All right, JC Jackson in the the All Pro tier. I mean, it's hard to tell.
I feel really bad moving him out, but
C plus.
Yeah, I think that's a fair move, considering we didn't get to see everything from him.
Damn, that's really painful. Another painful thing. I don't know if Derwin's been playing at an All-Pro level this year.
I know people will hate that. I know Arjun's coverage metric hates it. If his rookie year or the best of Derwin is his All-Pro level, then I would not say he's been playing at that same level.
I'd say top 10.
Yeah, and I even think like very close to All-Pro that could turn around very quick. But yeah, I would agree.
Joey also painful for the opposite reason, because I felt like his first couple of games were pro level stuff, and he was probably headed for that. So that sucks. But I don't know if we can move him up when he's injured right now.
Yeah, just a few more games, and you probably could have, but no, at this point, at the level he was playing, sure, absolutely, but couldn't do it. Khalil, I think, probably still top 10. If he had maintained a little bit more momentum against the Seahawks, maybe. I know there's some good run defense in there, which is really good. Is he top 3? I mean, there's a lot of pass rushers out, but I don't. He's closer to All-Pro than he was before.
Yeah, I'm fine leaving Klumac where he is. Obviously there were a lot of people talking about Uchenna and Wosu this week, and I understand that he's having a good season as a pass rusher, but I mean, Klumac is so valuable as a run defender that I'm good leaving him there. Next for me, I'm comfortable moving Asante Samuel Jr. up a tier. I think he's been really good. He's been top 5 in the league in forced incompletions. He is giving up a lot of yards, but he's playing a lot of off coverage as well at times. So I'm comfortable with Asante Samuel Jr. as a B level starter next to Sebastian. And frankly, I think we could move Morgan Fox up a tier as well.
I'd also move Bryce Callahan to the very same tier.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Bryce
29's
Callahan has
Bryce.
been awesome for
Yeah.
this team. Yep.
Honestly, I would even petition that he would have top 10 slot corner status. I know it's
Yeah, slot corner 100%. If you want to make that distinction, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that one.
I'd move Drew Tranquil up. I
was
guess
gonna say that next, yeah.
C plus tier. Or B?
Yeah, I'm cool with that. He's been really good with moments. There's still, both of the linebackers have some kind of eye recognition and just lack of physicality, like a lack of ability to shed blocks. But Tranquil's been really good, man. He's been a great blitzer. He's been great in coverage. I think Arjun's coverage metric had him as like the best on the team, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm cool with Tranquil there. I would also say that I wouldn't hate moving Morgan Fox up a tier. Although he's not really their number 2.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends how you.
Should we move Austin Johnson up a tier then?
I think so.
I mean, he's top 5 in run stops and run stop percentage right now.
So would you go average starter with upside? Or above average B tier?
I'm cool with C plus tier. I'm cool with C plus tier.
Yeah. I feel like his role maybe makes him like B tier, but it's like maybe not as. Morgan Fox has been really great as a pass rusher lately. Run defender, not as much, but I think what you do as a pass rusher, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say something crazy that I didn't expect to see before the season. Promote Jerry Tillery from B to C.
Tyler read your mind. He was hovering on it. Yeah, I mean, Tillery's been good, man. He's had some good moments, and he had 3 pretty good reps on Sunday that were wiped out from penalties too. So that was unfortunate to see. I thought his roughing the passer penalty was frankly bullshit. It was so annoying.
Yeah, it was. Does Christian Covington get a bump for the famous 4th and 2 stop against Houston?
No, he doesn't. I mean, JT has been a healthy scratch. So, I mean, who's next to JT? Is that
Tavon
Troy
Campbell?
Reader?
This is Troy Reader. Yeah.
Okay.
Tavon Campbell. He's not on the team.
I guess I could just start making some of these. If I'm talking active roster,
yeah,
obviously we did this. Amen. Jaw Taylor. No, Jaw Taylor can't move up yet, but I like him.
Special teams wise, absolutely could move up.
Off a
In-N-Out Burger, unfortunately.
How sad.
To the left of JT, is that Troy Reader?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Troy Reader.
Obviously not changing him. I just was wondering.
Yeah, a lot more movement here, although some guys on offense might have moved, but they're banged up, they're injured. How do we feel about the draft picks the last couple of years? Like we didn't talk about moving Chris Rumpf. Neiman is still there.
Still feel the same about both of them in terms of.
I mean, Neiman, his value right now is purely special teams.
Yeah.
I mean, Rumpf, you could probably say the same.
Ooh.
I wish I could move JT Woods up. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I'm really well. Was he active?
He was not. No,
he was against Denver. He was sort of recently once. But then,
I mean, he should be active now. I mean, they're moving the roster spot from JC Jackson to Jeremiah Attaochu. So JT Woods should be active.
I guess in theory, like if that's JT Woods, then then Gilman should either technically be a D tier or I should flip flop JT to F tier.
Prior to this very last game, I think there could have had a conversation about moving Nas Adderley down, but
he's been good the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm fine with keeping him where he is. Yeah. Could we move Gilman up a tier?
I mean, he technically should be ahead.
all in all, bro.
He should be ahead of
the
JT.
interception. This is the gift interception that Jacoby threw.
But he
yeah,
I mean, he is ahead of JT on the depth chart, so I think he does have to at least be in the same tier.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So the Chargers have $500 million invested in their defense and not a single All-Pro currently. Although I'm sure Chargers fans in the chat are talking about Derwin and Khalil. Who's the best player on defense though right now? Like at their spot. Is it Callahan?
At their spot, it's Callahan. I think Callahan is arguably the best slot corner in the league right now.
Yeah, that's we're close to that. I think. I don't know if we'll get recognition for this defense, but
I'd say if we're not distinguishing slot and overall corner, then it's probably Bosa. But yeah, if we are distinguishing, then Callahan.
Yeah.
There we go.
Alrighty.
Ask you to do that. So I do agree with. I mean, if Joey Bosa were healthy, it would be him 100%. But he's not, so it's Callahan to me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a little bit of a performance report, I guess, or stock check-in. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. So interesting to see some movement. Unfortunately, players not living up to it, or definitely living up to it. So it was a good conversation.
Yeah, I like going back and reflecting because sometimes we just power forward past everything, and I like to go look back at like mock drafts and free agent projections and all that sort of stuff just to see what worked, what didn't work, and then where we might have been off based on where we thought players were going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So talked a little bit about current players on the roster, talked about some potential trade targets on our next episode. We are going to kind of focus in on some internal personnel changes. I think you can imagine one of them, at least based off the conversation today with Trey McKitty. We'll also talk about just some general schematic things we'd like to see going forward, how the team can kind of improve throughout the rest of the season. So as I said on Twitter yesterday, I will be dropping an interview with Bridget Condon, NFL Network reporter, who's fantastic, doing a lot of great stuff covering the Chargers and other things. So keep an eye out for that conversation. And then Tyler also has an interview that will be dropping tomorrow.
Yes, interview with the 33rd football team's Josh Larkey. That group was Chase Daniels on there all the time. You've seen his little segments. That's where Chase Daniel currently resides as well. He's making the rounds though.
Yeah, he is. He's doing NFL Network as well. So have a good couple interviews dropping, and then we're not going to do our usual Saturday Q&A since the Chargers are on a bye week. We will be going live again on Sunday, though. We'll have some good conversations that day. And again, kind of focus on how this team takes the next step back to potentially getting back on track. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. Appreciate all of the chats and the positive feedback. So if you are listening to this, please leave a rating or a review. We always do appreciate that as well. So we will see you guys on Sunday.